You're listening to the Dibbly-Dobbly podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Now that's the talking about yourself bit done, Joey, and let's get into this cricket discussion. I've chosen some topics to talk about and discuss, and I thought for the first topic, Joey, we talk about the history of USA cricket, especially between the 1700s and the 1900s in particular, because you can learn a lot about cricket from its history. And the history of cricket in the USA is quite interesting. And over the years, cricket in America have a long history with each other. Many people have done what they can to introduce cricket into the States over the years. I think everyone knows that in 1844, the US and Canada played the first ever international match of cricket. And this was obviously before the first ever test match, which was played in 1877 between Australia and England in Melbourne at the MCG. And that first game between the US and Canada was before that. Just shows you how long USA has been involved in the game. And obviously, a lot of people may know or may not know this. In 1932, Don Bradman, the great Sir Donald Bradman, and an Australian team toured the US and Canada. They played some games all around US and Canada, promoting the game and all that, and people wanted to see Don Bradman. And obviously Bradman and Babe Ruth met each other. I think they met each other at Yankee Stadium for a game of baseball they watched. And there's a photo of them together, two icons of their sport. Obviously, Babe Ruth, very high in baseball regards. And obviously Sir Donald Bradman, one of the greatest ever batsmen to ever play the game of cricket, and he was. And also you have the Philadelphian cricket team, which is probably the most well-known US cricket team ever. Played some first-class matches against many countries and other cricketing teams around the world. And played against Australia a few times, mind you, and they had a few wins against them. And they played first-class cricket between 1879 to 1913. So it was a long span there of games for them until cricket dropped off and they went their other ways. But Joey, you've done some videos on New World Cricket about the history of the USA, involvement in cricket from the 1700s to the 1900s. So tell us what you have discovered and learned, and give us a brief overview of what you've learned from reading into the history of the game in America.
Yeah, well, one of my taglines for my channel is, New World Cricket, America's first pastime. And cricket was really America's first pastime and was one of the first organized sports in the country before, soccer became organized, before American football. There was cricket. It's really like the oldest organized sport there is. And so that was, George Washington during the Revolutionary War played a form of cricket, like I guess it's an Americanized form of cricket called wicket. I guess the bat was more like a spoon, and there was 3 innings, but more or less cricket, a version of cricket. And it was quite a popular game in the early United States. I mean, that's something that was played regularly. There's not too much documented on it. You mentioned in 1844, the first international match between the United States and Canada playing cricket, and drew a pretty good crowd. And again, some of the documented history could be better. But it was part of American culture. And there was a lot of cricket teams even as far, early back as like the early 1900s, there were a lot of cricket teams in America. And so I think one thing that led to the change from cricket to baseball was like the commercialization of baseball. And so a lot of teams, were lured into converting into baseball teams. And that's really unfortunate. And so that happened, like the 1900s. But you mentioned the Philadelphia cricket team. I'm going to be doing like a long series on Bart King, like the most famous American cricketer. So I still have a lot to learn, but I've just been learning about him his cricket stance, and he like puts his hand behind his back and like runs. It's so cool. And I wish we had more photos of him or like video. But he was famous, and and Philadelphia was a popular team internationally. And so it was hard for them to play American teams because they were so good. So they had to go, abroad and or have teams come. And that was fairly regular occurrence of having teams from Australia or England come to the United States to play. And I think England's first international cricket tour was to the United States, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of those early tours were to the United States. It's really unfortunate how when they made at the time it was Imperial Cricket Conference, I think the ICC, how it was only open to teams that were part of the British Commonwealth. And so obviously didn't include us. I think for a time it didn't include South Africa too. But so it was that and the conversion to baseball that really like severed ties. But for a long time we had a really good history of cricket. And so so I'm researching Bart King, doing videos on him, just trying to make these connections between like cricket now, and we can trace our lineage back to the earliest history of our country. It's really cool. And so Bart King was so famous. I know I'm jumping all over the place, but Bart King was so famous that he would go to London or he'd go to England and people would recognize him on the street. He was like a rock star there. And so we produced, homegrown cricket talents that were famous, internationally. And so it can happen again. And so, we're developing a new rivalry with Canada. I think certain colleges have had a continuous cricket program since the 1800s. The name is losing me right now, but I did a video like top 10 cricket facts about United States. And so there are some colleges that can trace their lineage back, very few, but we still have some connections to modern day cricket that trace lineage back to the early days of cricket. So it's really, really interesting to learn about, and just thinking, the first international game, the first English, tour, both have America involved. I think we owe it to the cricket world to be a bigger part of the international cricket stage, because I think we were integral in the early part of cricket. And so we need to bring that back and be important again. So I just think it's a matter of time before that happens again. But, we can share baseball and cricket. I think the biggest problem was, when we had these cricket teams converting to baseball, it was just like a financial decision. Like we're struggling, or, we want to make money, not to be rich, at the time it was just to survive. So I think we can maybe learn nowadays to live, together and appreciate both games. I know there's a YouTuber named John Boy. He does baseball videos, and occasionally he'll do a cricket video, which is really cool. And just like appreciate how these games are similar in many ways, and how they share similar histories. And just one more thing. There was this guy, Harry Wright. He played in the 1800s, late 1800s, for a Cincinnati baseball team, and he won the championship. But he credited his victory on using cricket strategies that he learned playing cricket, and he converted to a baseball player. So, I mean, there's so many things that we can learn from each other that I think we would be remiss if we didn't try that. So, lots of opportunities there for sure.
Absolutely. It's just wonderful to hear the history of USA cricket from you there, just a little bit there. And I'm sure everyone would feel the same in terms of learning something new and different, and about how cricket and the US have a long history with each other. And it's wonderful that you're, doing some videos and educating people on the history, because to fully understand cricket, you must understand its history, and then you fully appreciate it for what it is. In any form of cricket, really. If you understand the history behind it, then you appreciate where the game's come from and how it started until now. So the game in America has definitely done that in terms of its long history, and it continues to grow and grow as cricket's now getting into the States and being developed, and more people are coming accustomed with it. So fantastic to hear what you had to say on the history there, and doing those videos on your channel, and no doubt people will be educated on the history of cricket in the USA, which is fantastic. And it's quite interesting, as I said before. It is quite interesting doing some research myself. It's quite interesting reading up about it. You learn something new about these different players that played, and what they did. And as you said, there's not much on them. There's no footage or photos or any information, because obviously the records back then are a bit everywhere, as they were back in the 1800s. It's the same with other forms of cricket as well. You don't have much footage from the early days, especially 1800s in that sort of period. So, but yeah, to learn more about these players and the history and how it all started is fantastic. And hopefully people watching or listening to this episode would take some time to research and learn about, cricket in America, which is fantastic. And cricket's all about learning. You always learn something new every day in this game. So no doubt people will feel that as well, listening to this episode, listening to you, Joey, speak about the history of cricket in the USA there. Be a brief overview, which is fantastic.
Cool.
Hi, everyone. Hope you enjoyed hearing Joey and I discuss the history of USA cricket from the 1700s to the 1900s.